Alright, welcome back everybody to another episode of Chasing the Truth, and we're going to get right into it today. We're going to talk about my review of the State of the Union address on Thursday, March 7th, 2024. So I'm going to start off with my rating of the speech on March 7th, 2024 by Joe Biden. And I want to say my unbiased opinion overall, I thought it was a pretty good speech. Okay, so I'm going to start off and I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. I'm going to give my review of the speech, and I have 5 good things from the speech, 5 bad things, and 4 major takeaways. Five good things from the State of the Union that Joe Biden talked about were the economy, education, healthcare, taxes, and veterans. So with the economy, Joe Biden talked about adding 15 million new jobs within the past 3 years, 800 new manufacturing jobs, also adding jobs that are high paying, like starting with $100,000 with no college degree. Also, he talked about fighting not raising the retirement age. Also, he mentioned about reducing the credit card late fees from the predatory credit card companies and financial institutions, so that's good as well. With education, he talked about making pre-K free to 3 and 4 year olds and how that leads to higher high school graduation rates and leading to college graduation. Also, he talked about expanding high quality tutoring for individuals in school and working with businesses to help those kids get into college. Also, he talked about giving public school teachers a raise. So those are all 3 good things that I think everyone can agree with. As far as healthcare, Joe Biden talked about Americans spend more money in the world than any other country on prescription drugs each year, and he talked about capping the amount that someone spends on prescription drugs at $2,000 a year, which is very good. Also, he talked about insulin specifically and how he wanted to cap the price at insulin because the average cost of insulin is around, I guess, $400, and it only costs $10 to make. So he wants to prevent companies from exposing and gaining too much profit off of insulin, which people with diabetes need. If it's only $10 to make and they're charging $400, that's a high profit margin. So fighting insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies who make a lot of profit off of people who rely on these prescription medications is a very good thing. Economy. He also talked about providing a $5,000 tax credit for first-time homeowner. He also talked about capping the federal tax rates and promising not to raise tax rates for individuals who make less than $400,000 a year, which is good. He also promised to stop fighting for tax breaks for corporations, and he argued that corporations don't pay enough taxes and they get too many tax breaks. So I agree with that, and I think that that's good as well. As far as veterans go, he talked about working with the VA to lower their prescription costs. He also talked about passing a law, working with the organization to end the cancer that some of the veterans are exposed to after serving, and just working with them to make their lives better and improve their lives. 5 bad things from the State of the Union address that I want to talk about was Joe Biden's stance on the border, gun control, international relations, transgenders, and the vaccine and the COVID-19 pandemic. As far as the border goes, most people would say that's probably one of the most pressing issues in the nation right now, and things are pretty wild on the border, and they don't seem to be getting better. One thing that Joe Biden said that I completely disagree with is he said that the number one job of the president is to care, and I disagree, because the number one job of the president is to protect the borders. Illegal immigration is really bad because illegal immigrants take up resources that Americans could be receiving. Also, illegal immigrants are here, and some are here committing crimes, which is not good at all. Joe Biden talked about a ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. I myself am I believe in the Second Amendment. However, I do not believe in banning assault weapons and high capacity magazines. I'm a big believer in guns don't kill people. Stupid and bad people with guns kill people. So banning assault weapons and high capacity magazines really won't affect anything at all. One of my biggest issues with this State of the Union address was his talk on international relations. At the beginning of the speech, his first thing he talked about was the war in Ukraine. He also compared his speech with Franklin Roosevelt, the president who was the president in 1941, talking about Hitler and World War II, which brings the question, are we going into World War III, or are we currently in World War III? Ukraine and Israel are not the most pressing issues for Americans. Most Americans couldn't even point Ukraine out on a map. He also talked about NATO and how we need to protect our allies. Well, neither Ukraine or Israel are in NATO. NATO are a group of our alliances, and we're supposed to protect them in international war. So we have really no obligation to protect Ukraine or Israel. And I really feel that the money that we send to Israel and Ukraine is money that we could be spending in America. I personally would not send a dime to either one of those countries, and especially since they're not one of our NATO allies, it's not really our problem at all. Joe Biden made it a point to talk about transgenders and how he had their backs. Now, I personally do not agree with transgenderism, and I think it's really bad for our country. Promoting transgenderism, especially to our youth, is very bad. Okay, it's definitely going to hurt our U.S. population going forward, because transgender people can't have kids once they have that surgery, and that's just a fact. Joe Biden talked about the vaccines and COVID-19. He said that the vaccines saved a whole bunch of lives, and even the vaccines are used to be beating cancer right now. Well, we spent 2 to 3 years talking about COVID and the COVID vaccine. I personally am not vaccinated, nor would I ever get vaccinated. So my opinion on that is that how is someone like me still able to be alive as much as they were talking about the vaccine? So I'm not going to go too much further into that, but I'm not a big vaccine person, and I really don't like how that's all they talked about for 2 to 3 years. Also, there's really no way to prove that vaccines save lives. I don't really think that it's been long enough to make that decision. So my 4 major takeaways from the State of the Union address are: we're going to talk about Biden's mental state, the Speaker of the House, which is Mike Johnson, the 2024 election, and then I'm going to give my overall opinion of the State of the Union. So my opinion on Biden's mental state and his overall health is not very good at all, okay? You have to keep in mind that Joe Biden is 81 years old, and he's currently the president. One thing I want to note is I counted at least 10 times, and I stopped counting after 10 times, that he was coughing and clearing his throat like he was sick, like he still had COVID. Also, you see this picture of him tripping, and there are other pictures on the internet of him tripping and falling off his bike. That's not very good at all. Also, he made a very big error when talking about the recent tragedy of Laken Riley, the young lady who was killed by an illegal immigrant. Instead of saying Laken Riley, he said Lincoln Riley, which is the football coach of USC. Overall, I think he did an okay job of making the speech, but you could just tell that he's suffering from old age and things aren't very good as a leader of the free world. Next, I want to talk about the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Okay, the reason why Mike Johnson is important is because if anything ever happens, okay, and this is straight from American government class in high school, is the chain of command is the president, the vice president, and the Speaker of the House. So him and his opinions do matter. My biggest issue with Mike Johnson is if you do research and look at some of his statements and review his social media accounts, he talks about Israel and Ukraine, okay? And I want my Speaker of the House talking about American issues. And another issue I have with him is he's quote unquote a MAGA Republican, okay? So he's supposed to be a Trump guy, and if you're a Trump guy, you need to be talking America first, and he's not talking America first, and that's my biggest issue with him. Even though he claims himself as a Republican, I think he's just more of the same, and he's not really doing anything for the country, and I personally think he's a fraud. Okay, next I want to talk about the 2024 election. All right, this is an election year, and the 2 top candidates are going to be 81-year-old Joe Biden, and by the time the election comes around, it's going to be 78-year-old Donald Trump. Here I want to take a look at the odds. We have Trump as the favorite, who has an implied probability of 55% to win the election of 2024. Next is Joe Biden at around 35%. After Joe Biden is Gavin Newsom, and Michelle Obama just announced that she's not even running, okay? So it's pretty much either going to be Donald Trump, Joe Biden, or Gavin Newsom going forward, who will be the president in 2025. So as of right now, it looks like it's going to be Joe Biden versus Donald Trump again. Two very old men. One will be 81, one will be 78 years old going into the election in November of 2024. Here's my opinion on the State of the Union. Despite Joe Biden's good speech overall, I personally do not think that things are good in the State of the Union. Joe Biden mentioned a few things that were very good about the economy in terms of creating jobs and tax cuts, but I think if you ask the average American, things are not good for them and they don't have a positive outlook. One thing he did mention in his speech, he started off talking about comparing himself to Franklin Roosevelt and the start of World War II. He then also mentioned talking about Abraham Lincoln and Civil War, and he talked about the country is divided. I 100% agree with him. The country is very divided. People are still talking about January 6th and the 2020 elections, okay? That is a very big deal. There are some people out there who are still claiming to this day that Trump won the 2020 election. Also, that's what those January 6th protests were about as well. My question and what I'm very concerned about is this being an election year. What's going to happen if Donald Trump loses again? Right now, he's the favorite to win, but he may lose again. And then you have a big majority of the country still going to Trump rallies in 2024, and they've been going ever since 2020, and he lost the election. But there's a chance that he might lose again. And then we'll be stuck with Joe Biden, who will be 85 years old if he winds up staying his whole presidency. And you have people during the speech chanting 4 more years. I don't want 4 more years of Joe Biden, not at all. He claimed that the State of the Union is strong and is getting stronger. I disagree. I think the State of the Union is very bad, and I'm very concerned. I do want to remind all my listeners that it is an election year, and that Joe Biden, even in his speech, mentioned all the riots and protests that happened in 2020, and I think 2020 was a crazy year. And I think that this year has the potential to even be worse than it was in 2020. So far, that's not happening, but I still don't feel good about things this year. And we still are 8 months away from the election, so we'll see. There are people still in jail from protesting on January 6, 2021. And y'all can check out my video that I put out on January 6th 2 years ago. January 6th is a very big deal. That's why they can still continue to talk about it in the news. The government is still going after people and arresting people for protesting and even covering January 6, 2021. Trump has promised to pardon all peaceful protesters on January 6, 2021, because people need to know that there are people in jail for peacefully protesting on January 6, 2021. January 6th is a big issue to me, and I agree with Trump. The people who are in jail for peacefully protesting on January 6, 2021 need to be out of jail yesterday. Thank you for staying this long and listening to what I have to say. Please follow, like, and subscribe, and leave your comments down below. I'll catch you next time. Thank you.